Hi, my name is Lauri Goforth, and I live near Cincinnati, Ohio. I am so excited as Jane has been in my reading pile forever and never managed to make it to the top. So this is a great excuse to prioritize it. I just finished reading through it all and it sounded good, and then I've realized I didn't hit the record button. So we're going to do it again. It's chapter 39. And Cupid is with me, and come here. Actually, I was going to say, come here. Cupid, come here. This is my Siberian Husky, Cupid. Yeah, she's a kissy face, and my family's had Siberian Huskies forever, so I had to get her into the video. Anyhow, chapter 39. If we could only make the summer last longer, sighed Jane. But that was impossible. It was September now, and soon she must put off Jane and put on Victoria. But not before they got Miranda Jimmy John married off. Jane was so busy helping the Jimmy Johns get ready for the wedding that Lantern Hill hardly knew her, except to get a bite for Dad. And as a bridesmaid, she had a chance to wear the adorable dress of rose pink organdy with its embroidered blue and white spots, which Mother had gotten her. But once the wedding was over, Jane had to say goodbye to Lantern Hill again, to the windy silver of the Gulf, to the pond, to Big Donald's wood lane, which, alas, was going to be cut down and plowed up, to her garden, which was to her a garden that never knew winter, because she saw it only in summer, to the wind that sang in the spruces and the gulls that soared whitely over the harbor, to Bubbles and Happy and First Peter and Silver Penny and Dad. But though she felt sad over it, there was none of the despair that had filled her heart the year before. She would be back next summer. That was an understood thing now. She would be seeing Mother again. She did not dislike the idea of going back to St. Agatha's. There was Jody's delight to be looked forward to, and Dad was going with her as far as Montreal. AntiReign came to Lantern Hill the day before Jane left, and seemed to want to say something she couldn't quite manage to say. When she went away, she held Jane's hand and looked at her very significantly. "If you hear some news before next spring, lovey." "What news am I likely to hear?" said Jane, with the terrible directness which Aunt Irene always found so trying. "Oh, one can never tell. Who knows what changes may come before then?" Jane was uncomfortable for a few moments, then shrugged it away. Aunt Irene was always giving mysterious hints about something, throwing out wisps of insinuation that clung like cobwebs. Jane had learned to not mind Aunt Irene. "I've never really been able to make much of that child, as I would like," mourned Aunt Irene to a friend. "She holds you at arm's length somehow. The Kennedys were all hard. Her mother now. You'd think to look at her she was all rose and cream and sweetness. But underneath, my dear, hard as a rock. She ruined my brother's life and did everything, I understand, to set his child against him." "Jane seems very fond of her father now," said the friend. "Oh, I'm sure she is, as fond as she can be of anyone. But Andrew is a very lonely man, and I don't know if he will ever be anything else. Lately, I've been wondering if he'll finally work himself up to getting a United States divorce and marrying Lillian Moreau," said the friend bluntly. She had much experience in filling up Aunt Irene's blanks. Aunt Irene looked quite shocked at such plain speaking. "Oh, I wouldn't like to say that. I don't really know. But of course Lillian is the girl he should have married instead of Robin Kennedy. They have so much in common. And though I don't approve of divorce ordinarily, I think it's shocking. Still, there are special circumstances." Jane and Dad had a delightful trip to Montreal. "How nice to think we're an hour younger than we were," said Dad as he put his watch back at Campbellton. He said things like that all along the way about everything. Jane clung to him very tightly in Montreal station. "Dad, darling, but I'll be back next summer, you know." "Of course," said Dad. Then he added, "Jane, here's a spot of hard cash for you. I don't suppose you get a very huge allowance at 60 gay. None at all. But can you spare this, Dad? Jane was looking at the bills he had put in her hand. $50? That's an awful lot of money, Dad. This has been a good year for me, Jane. Editors have been kind. And somehow, when you're about, I write more. I felt some of my old ambitions stirring this past year. Jane, who had spent all her Lion reward money on things for Lantern Hill and treats for the young fry, who had been associated with her in the episode, tucked the money away in her bag, reflecting that it would come in handy at Christmas. Life, deal gently with her. Love, never desert her, said Andrew Stewart, looking after the train as it steamed away. Jane found that Grandmother had her room done over for her. When she went up to it, she discovered a wonderful splendor of rose and gray instead of the old gloom. Silvery carpet, shimmering curtains, chintz chairs, cream tinted furniture, pink silk bedspread. The old bearskin rug, the only thing she had really liked, was gone. So was the cradle. The big mirror had been replaced by a round, rimless one. How do you like it? Said Grandmother watchfully. Jane recalled her little room at Lantern Hill, with its bare floor and sheepskin rug and white spool bed covered with its patchwork quilt. It is very beautiful, Grandmother. Thank you very much. Fortunately, said Grandmother, I did not expect much enthusiasm. After Grandmother had gone out, Jane turned her back on the splendor and went to the window. The only things of home were the stars. She wondered if Dad were looking at them. No, of course he wouldn't be home yet. But they were all be there in their proper places. The North Star over the watchtower, Orion sparkling over Big Donald's Hill. And Jane knew that she would never be the least bit afraid of Grandmother again. Oh, Jane, said Jody. Oh, Jane. I know you'll be happy with the Titus ladies, Jody. They're a little old-fashioned, but they're so kind. And they have the loveliest garden. You won't have to make a garden by sticking faded flowers in a plot anymore. You'll see the famous cherry walk in bloom. I've never seen that. It's like a beautiful dream, said Jody. But, oh, Jane, I hate to leave you. We'll be together in the summers instead of in the winters. That will be the only difference, Jody, and it will be ever so much nicer. We'll swim. I'll teach you the crawl. Mother says her friend, Mrs. Newton, will take you as far as Sackville, and Miss Justina Titus will meet you there, and Mother is going to get your clothes. I wonder if it will be like this when I go to heaven, said Jane breathlessly. Jane missed Jody when she went, but life was growing full. She loved St. Agatha's now. She liked Phyllis quite well, and Aunt Sylvia said she had never really seen a child blossom out socially as Victoria had done. Uncle William couldn't floor her when he asked her about her capitals now. Uncle William was beginning to think that Victoria had something in her, and Jane was finding she liked Uncle William reasonably well. As for Grandmother, well, Mary told Frank it did her heart good to see Miss Victoria standing up to the old lady. Not that stand up is the right word either. The madam can't put it over her like she used to. Nothing she says seems to get under Miss Victoria's skin anymore. And does that make her mad? I've seen her turn white with rage when she said something real venomous, and Miss Victoria just answering in that respectful tone of hers that's just as good as telling her she doesn't care a hoot about what any Kennedy of them all says anymore. I wish Miss Robin would learn that trick, said Frank. Mary shook her head. It's too late for her. She's been under the old lady's thumb too long. Never went against her in her life except for one thing, and lived to repent that, so they say. And anyhow, she's a cat of a different breed from Miss Victoria. One November evening, Mother went again to Lakeside Gardens to see her friend, and took Jane with her. Jane welcomed the chance to see her house again. Would it be sold? Unbelievably, it wasn't. Jane's heart gave a bound of relief. She was so afraid it would be. She couldn't understand how it wasn't. It seemed so entirely desirable to her. She did not know that the builder had decided that he had made a mistake when he built a little house in Lakeside Gardens. People who could live in Lakeside Gardens wanted bigger homes. Though Jane was glad in her toes that her house hadn't been sold, she inconsistently resentful that it was unlighted and unwarmed. She hated the oncoming winter because of the house. Its heart must ache with the cold then. She sat on the steps and watched the lights blooming out along the gardens and wished there was one in her house. How the dead brown leaves still clinging to the oaks rustled in the windy night. How the lights along the lakeshore twinkled through the trees of the ravine. And how she hated, yes, positively hated, the man who would buy this house. It just isn't fair, said Jane. No one will ever love it as I do. It really belongs to me. The week before Christmas, Jane bought the materials for a fruitcake out of the money Dad had given her and compounded it in the kitchen. Then she expressed it to Dad. She did not ask anyone's permission for all this, just went ahead and did it. Mary held her tongue, and Grandmother knew nothing about it, but Jane would have sent it just the same if she had. One thing made Christmas Day memorable for Jane that year. Just after breakfast, Frank came in to say that long distance was calling Miss Victoria. Jane went to the hall with a puzzled look. Who on earth could be calling her on long distance? She lifted the receiver to her ear. Lantern Hill calling Superior Jane. Merry Christmas, and thanks for that cake, said Dad's voice as distinctly as if he were in the same room. Dad, Jane gasped, where are you? Here at Lantern Hill. This is my Christmas present to you, Janelet. 3 minutes over 1,000 miles. Probably no two people ever cram more into 3 minutes. When Jane went back to the dining room, her cheeks were crimson and her eyes glowed like jewels. Who was calling you, Victoria? Asked Grandmother. Dad, said Jane. Mother gave a little choked cry. Grandmother wheeled on her furiously. Perhaps, she said icily, you think he should have called you. He should, said Jane. And that's the end of chapter 49. I hope you enjoyed it.